Think you know Washington quarters? Think again. Today, we're revealing the top 3 U.S. Washington quarters that could completely blow your mind. These aren't just ordinary coins you find in your pocket change. These are rare, collectible, and in some cases, almost impossible to find. From hidden minting errors to astonishing variations that slipped past the mint, each quarter tells a story of history, rarity, and unbelievable value. Collectors have been hunting these pieces for decades, and the prices, they can reach thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars for the rarest examples. We'll start with number 3, a coin so unusual that most collectors overlook it, but once you see it, you'll understand why it's a must-have. Then we move to number 2, a piece with a twist in its design so subtle yet so valuable it could completely change your collection. And finally, number 1. This is the coin that will shock even the most experienced collectors. Its rarity, its story, and its value are almost unbelievable. Some say it's the holy grail of Washington quarters. By the end of this video, you won't just be looking at quarters the same way. You'll see them as hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. Stick with us, because missing this could be the difference between ordinary collecting and uncovering something truly extraordinary. The story of the 1966 Washington quarter begins in the middle of one of the most dramatic transitions in modern American numismatics. To understand the significance of this single coin, it is important to return to the years leading up to its creation, when the United States was experiencing a severe national coin shortage, a crisis of silver supply and economic pressures that forced the government to reshape the very nature of American circulating coinage. The Washington quarter had already been in production since 1932, originally intended as a one-year commemorative issue honoring the bicentennial of George Washington's birth. However, because of its popularity and the practicality of its size, it quickly became the nation's permanent quarter dollar. For decades, it was made of 90% silver and 10% copper, maintaining the same traditional appearance that Americans had grown accustomed to. But by the early 1960s, the rising price of silver began to threaten the entire monetary system. As silver bullion values climbed closer to the face value of circulating coins, the U.S. Mint realized that people were hoarding coins for their metal content and withdrawing them from circulation. This shortage became severe by 1964, with many businesses struggling to obtain coins for daily transactions. The government responded by dramatically increasing mintages, but even this did little to solve the problem because the root issue was the rising market price of silver itself. In 1965, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, an historic shift which effectively removed silver from the dime and quarter and reduced silver content in the half dollar. For the first time since the 1790s, the quarter would no longer contain silver. Instead, the mint introduced a clad composition using an outer layer of copper nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This new composition gave the coins a slightly different look and feel, with a brighter surface and a distinctive ring when dropped. Production of these new clad quarters began late in 1965, but because of the ongoing coin shortage, coins dated 1965, 1966, and 1967 were all produced without mint marks and in extremely large quantities. This was done deliberately to discourage hoarding, since collectors would no longer be able to hunt for rare mint mark varieties. The 1966 Washington quarter therefore carries no mint mark, regardless of whether it was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, representing a temporary era when the mint centralized designs and discouraged collecting in order to keep coins in circulation. The 1966 quarter design continued to feature the familiar portrait of George Washington, created by sculptor John Flanagan in 1932. His depiction of Washington, based on Jean-Antoine Houdon's famous bust, became the enduring symbol of the American quarter for more than 60 years. On the obverse, the image of Washington, faces left with the word "Liberty" above, and the motto, "In God We Trust," to the left. The date 1966 appears at the bottom. The reverse still showed the heraldic eagle perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath, symbolizing America's long-standing balance between strength and peace. While the design remained visually the same, the new clad composition produced a different luster and a slightly different shade compared to the silver quarters of earlier years. Many people at the time immediately noticed the change in color and sound, which led to mixed public reactions. Some welcomed the modernization, while others disliked the loss of silver, feeling that coins no longer carried the same beauty or intrinsic value. The production of 1966 quarters was extraordinarily high because the mint was working relentlessly to eliminate the national coin shortage. More than 821 million quarters dated 1966 were produced, an immense total at the time. These coins were struck using improved minting techniques that allowed for faster production, though some quality inconsistencies emerged because the mint prioritized quantity over perfection during those crisis years. Collectors later observed that many 1966 quarters show uneven strikes, weak details in Washington's hair or the eagle's feathers, and surface marks caused by high-speed production. Nonetheless, the majority of Americans simply needed coins for everyday use, and the 1966 quarter quickly became one of the most widely circulated denominations of the era. Another important aspect of the 1966 quarter's history involves the mint's temporary suspension of proof sets and uncirculated coin sets. From 1965 through 1967, the mint replaced traditional collector sets with special mint sets, often called SMS sets. These sets contained specially struck coins of higher quality than circulation strikes, but not quite to the level of standard proofs. The 1966 special mint set included a quarter with sharper details and a smoother finish. And today, these SMS quarters are an important part of the coin's history. They show how the mint attempted to satisfy collectors while still prioritizing circulation needs. Some SMS quarters even exhibit a deep cameo appearance on both sides, making them highly desirable to advanced collectors who appreciate their visual beauty and relative rarity. The 1966 quarter also marks a turning point in American monetary policy. After centuries of circulating coins made from precious metals, the United States fully transitioned to fiat-based coinage using inexpensive metals whose value was not tied to market prices. This ensured stability in the face of economic fluctuations and allowed the mint to maintain reliable production without fear of hoarding. The move to clad coinage in 1965 and 1966 solidified the modern era of American coins, setting the stage for all subsequent decades of U.S. currency production. The 1966 Washington quarter therefore stands not only as a piece of historical metal, but as a symbol of economic necessity and national adaptation. It reflects the government's response to inflation, industrial change, and the realities of a modernizing economy. As the years passed, the 1966 quarter remained in circulation for decades and became a familiar sight in commerce throughout the late 20th century. Millions of Americans handled these coins without realizing the historical significance behind their creation. Even today, many 1966 quarters continue to circulate, though most have been worn by years of use. Collectors often search for examples in high grades or SMS versions preserved with exceptional surfaces. While the coin itself is common, its historical context is rich and essential for understanding the evolution of American coinage. It tells a story of a nation undergoing economic transformation, of a mint adapting its practices to unprecedented challenges, and of a population that relied heavily on the quarter as a critical tool of daily life. The 1966 Washington quarter remains an important artifact of its time because it represents the end of an era for silver coinage and the beginning of the modern clad system still in use today. It is a reminder of the economic pressures of the 1960s, the ingenuity of the U.S. Mint, and the enduring legacy of George Washington's gracing American currency. Though simple in appearance, the 1966 quarter embodies a chapter of American monetary history filled with change, adaptation, and the reshaping of national standards in response to global metal markets and domestic needs. This makes the 1966 quarter a fascinating subject for collectors, historians, and anyone interested in the evolution of American money from precious metal tradition to practical modern coinage. The story of the 1991 Washington quarter begins many decades before the coin itself was minted because its origins are tied to the long and significant history of the Washington quarter series that first appeared in 1932. The Washington quarter was originally introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and it replaced the standing Liberty quarter that had been minted since 1916. Designed by sculptor John Flanagan, the new quarter quickly became a permanent part of American coinage rather than a one-year commemorative issue, and by the time the year 1991 arrived, the Washington quarter had already been in production for nearly 60 years. The 1991 edition of the coin reflects a period of transition for U.S. coinage, as well as a moment of stability within the long-running series. To understand the 1991 quarter more deeply, it is important to explore the context of the early 90s in the U.S. Mint. During this time, U.S. circulating coins were continuing the trends that began in the mid-60s, when silver was removed from most denominations. Since 1965, the Washington quarter had been made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, and the 1991 quarter followed that same structure consisting of layers of copper and nickel bonded together to produce a durable metallic surface resistant to wear from circulation. In the early 90s, millions of Americans used these quarters daily in payphones, vending machines, arcades, and everyday purchases. The 1991 quarter therefore served not just as a collector's piece, but also a functional piece of everyday American life. Design-wise, the 1991 Washington quarter continued the traditional appearance that had remained mostly unchanged for decades. The obverse side featured the left-facing bust of George Washington, modeled after Jean-Antoine Houdon's famous sculpture. Above Washington appeared the word Liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," was placed to the left of Washington's portrait. The date 1991 appeared at the bottom of the coin. The reverse side featured the heraldic eagle with spread wings clutching a bundle of arrows symbolizing readiness for defense, and beneath the eagle lay two olive branches symbolizing peace. Above the eagle was the inscription, "United States of America," and below it was the denomination quarter dollar. Around this time there had not yet been any major changes to the reverse design, which would later be replaced by the 50-state quarters program beginning in 1999. This means that the 1991 quarter represents the final era of the original eagle reverse that collectors today look back on with nostalgia. 3 mints were involved in producing quarters during this era. The Philadelphia Mint produced coins without a mint mark, the Denver Mint used the D mint mark, and the San Francisco Mint struck proof coins with the S mint mark. The Philadelphia and Denver struck hundreds of millions of business strike quarters that went directly into circulation across the United States. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Mint produced both standard-clad proof quarters and silver-proof quarters for collectors, although the silver versions were not intended for circulation. Each type of 1991 quarter has its own role in the broader picture of American numismatics. The business strike coins from Philadelphia and Denver were made for everyday use, while the San Francisco proof coins were struck using polished dies and specially prepared planchets, creating deep mirror surfaces and high-contrast designs treasured by collectors. Economically, the early 90s were a time of shifting markets, rising modern coin collecting interest, and a renewed fascination with circulating U.S. coinage. This was several years before the onset of the State Quarters program, which would explode public interest in coin collecting. The 1991 quarter was part of a steady but relatively quiet period in American coins, when collectors focused more on building year sets and mint sets, rather than chasing new designs. The U.S. Mint during these years placed great emphasis on precision and quality as the demand for coins remained high due to heavy public use. These quarters traveled across the country and around the world carried by soldiers, tourists, and American travelers. Many found their way into vending machines, while others sat in drawers, jars, and cash registers. Because of their heavy circulation, many 1991 quarters show significant wear today, making well-preserved examples more valued by collectors. Another fascinating aspect of the 1991 Washington quarter involves its place within the broader movement of modern minting technology. During this period, the mint was improving die-making techniques, experimenting with sharper details and more refined strike quality. This means certain 1991 quarters can exhibit noticeably better strike characteristics than earlier years, although variations always occurred depending on die life and production conditions. Collectors sometimes study small details, such as the sharpness of the eagle's feathers, Washington's hair, and the crispness of the lettering to evaluate the quality of individual coins. The 1991 quarter also stands as a symbolic marker of the calm before major changes. Within a decade, the Washington quarter would transform dramatically with the launch of commemorative designs and the retirement of the classic eagle reverse. But in 1991, none of these major innovations had begun. The quarter remained rooted in its long-standing traditions, unchanged, predictable, and familiar. For many Americans, this design represented stability. It was the same design generations had carried in their pockets, used in parking meters, and deposited into savings jars. The 1991 year, therefore, stands as one of the final chapters in the uninterrupted era of the classic Washington quarter before it entered a new era of national programs and artistic redesigns. When discussing a 2-hour historical narrative, it is also essential to explore the cultural and historical significance of George Washington in U.S. coinage. The Washington quarter helped reinforce America's collective memory of its first president and contributed to national identity. Children often saw the quarter as their first introduction to Washington's image. Schools used these coins in lessons to teach about presidents and American history. The 1991 quarter kept that tradition alive, connecting new generations to the legacy of the founding era. Collectors today view the 1991 Washington quarter as an affordable yet intriguing piece of modern numismatics. Circulated examples are common, but high-grade uncirculated examples, especially from original mint sets and pristine proof. Examples from San Francisco can carry collector interest. Certain varieties, minor die scratches, strike doubling, or die polish lines appear in some 1991 quarters, providing additional depth for specialists who enjoy searching through rolls and bags for unique examples. Though not rare, the 1991 quarter remains a historically meaningful coin because it belongs to the closing period of a design that had been in continuous production for nearly 70 years, a design linked deeply to American monetary heritage. Looking back, the 1991 Washington quarter tells a story of continuity craftsmanship, national symbolism, and everyday American life. It marks a moment in the evolution of U.S. coinage where tradition remained strong, yet change was drawing near. This coin circulated during a decade of economic adjustment, technological advancement, and cultural transformation in the United States. The story of the Washington quarter dollar 1968 begins long before the coin itself was minted because it is rooted in the long history of United States coinage and the evolution of the quarter as a denomination introduced in the late 18th century when the young nation was developing a monetary system based on decimal currency established by the Coinage Act of 1792, which laid out the standards for silver coinage and defined the quarter dollar as one of the key coins for daily commerce. Over the decades, the design of the quarter changed several times from the early draped bust and capped bust styles to the seated Liberty design that lasted for many years. and then the barber quarter introduced in 1892, which was eventually replaced by the standing Liberty quarter in 1916, a beautiful but somewhat problematic design that went through several modifications before the U.S. Mint decided in 1932 to introduce a completely new design featuring George Washington in honor of the bicentennial of his birth. This created the Washington Quarter, a design that quickly became one of the most recognizable and long-lasting in American history. By the time we reached 1968, the Washington Quarter had already been circulating for more than 3 decades, but the world of American coinage had undergone dramatic changes, especially in the early 1960s, when rising silver prices and widespread hoarding pushed the government to remove silver from circulating coins. This resulted in the Coinage Act of 1965, which ended silver composition for the quarter, and the dime introducing instead a clad composition made of copper and nickel with a pure copper core, sandwiched between layers of copper-nickel alloy. This change was controversial at the time, but became essential for keeping coins in circulation. The 1968 Washington Quarter is part of this new era of clad coinage, representing one of the early years of the modern composition that continues to this day. The year 1968 itself is historically significant not only for numismatics, but for the entire United States, as it was a year marked by political tension, social transformation, and major events that shaped the national mood. During this time, the U.S. Mint was making important changes, including reintroducing mint marks that had been removed from coins in 1965 to discourage hoarding. Starting in 1968, the mint marks returned but were moved from the right side of the reverse, to the obverse of the coin appearing just to the right of Washington's ribbon on the neckline. This detail makes the 1968 quarter an important transitional year as collectors can track the reappearance of mint marks, which play a major role in identifying where a coin was struck. In 1968, quarters were minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, but Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark. Denver coins bore the D mint mark, and San Francisco coins were struck primarily as proofs with the S mint mark. The obverse design of the 1968 quarter features the familiar portrait of George Washington created by sculptor John Flanagan based on a bust by Jean-Antoine Houdon. This portrait had been the subject of debate since its introduction because some artists felt it lacked the elegance of earlier coin designs, but the American public quickly accepted it, and it remained unchanged for decades. On the reverse is the heraldic eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch symbolizing strength and peace, a design that also came from Flanagan and was used on the quarter until 1998. The sharpness and detail of these features vary depending on the mint, because Denver coins were often struck more strongly than Philadelphia issues, while the San Francisco proof coins have mirror-like surfaces and frosted devices making them highly desirable for collectors. The clad composition of the 1968 quarter consists of outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a core of pure copper, giving the coin a total weight of 5.67 grams and a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. These specifications were created to match the size and general appearance of the earlier silver coins to maintain compatibility with vending machines and counting systems. Though the clad coins lack the intrinsic metal value of the older 90% silver quarters, they have their own significance as products of a changing economic landscape. In terms of production numbers, the 1968 Denver quarter has the highest mintage reaching tens of millions, while the Philadelphia Mint produced a smaller number and San Francisco issued only proof coins, making the proof 1968 S variety especially important for collectors. These mintages reflect the growing demand for coinage during the late 1960s when the U.S. economy was expanding and a variety of federal changes affected coin circulation. Because mint marks had been absent for 3 years, collectors quickly began hoarding 1968 D and 1968 S coins, marking the year as a fresh beginning for mint mark collecting. From a collector's standpoint, the 1968 Washington quarter has several interesting aspects, including strike-quality die varieties and condition rarity. High-grade business strike coins with strong luster and minimal marks are much harder to find than their mintage might suggest because the clad composition did not hold up as well as silver-to-circulation wear. Sharp details on Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers are especially prized. Proof coins from San Francisco also come in two types, cameo and deep cameo, depending on the level of frosting on the raised elements. Deep cameo proofs are especially sought after because they were produced in smaller quantities early in the proof-making process when dies were freshly prepared. Another important topic for a video involves the historical context of U.S. coin collecting during the late 1960s. The coin boom of the early 1960s, fueled by rising silver prices, had collapsed by 1965, leaving many collectors confused about which coins would be valuable in the future. The 1968 quarter sits at a crossroads between the old silver era and the modern clad era, representing a new direction for U.S. coinage. This makes the coin a popular subject for long educational videos because it allows the presenter to explore not only the coin itself, but also the broader economic and political environment that shaped it. Additionally, the move to clad coinage affected the public perception of coins as people noticed the difference in ring sound weight and appearance between silver and clad quarters. Many Americans disliked the new coins, at first complaining that they looked and felt cheap, but over time the population adjusted. Today, the 1968 quarter serves as a reminder of this transition period, symbolizing the shift from precious metal currency to modern industrial coinage. A detailed discussion can also cover the role of the U.S. mint facilities during 1968, including Denver's role in mass production, Philadelphia's work on circulation strikes, and San Francisco's transformation into a proof-producing mint. This restructuring allowed the mint to stabilize coin supply, which had been disrupted during the height of hoarding earlier in the decade. Another interesting element is the study of errors and varieties known for 1968 Washington quarters. Errors such as off-center, strikes die cracks, clipped planchets, and double dies exist, though they are not as common as in some other years. Collectors enjoy searching for these varieties because they can add significant value and make a coin stand out from the millions of standard strikes. When presenting this material in a long video, you can also explore how the Washington quarter evolved after 1968, leading to later major changes like the bicentennial quarters of 1976, the statehood quarter program beginning in 1999, the America the Beautiful quarters starting in 2010, and the recent American Women Quarter program. The 1968 coin stands as an early marker in the long timeline of these changes, bridging the classic Washington design with the modern era of special circulating commemoratives. The legacy of the Washington quarter dollar 1968 is therefore tied not only to its design and composition, but to the broader forces that shaped American coinage. It tells a story of economic pressure, rising metal prices changing, mint technology, collector interest, and national symbolism. The 1968 quarter continues to circulate today, and many examples still appear in pocket change, though high-grade coins remain prized by collectors. From a numismatic perspective, the 1968 quarter is valued not only for its place in monetary history, but for the subtle variations that occurred during production. Collectors often study the strength of the strike, the sharpness of Washington's hair curls, the detail in the eagle's wings, and the overall luster. Clad coins, especially those from the late 1960s, can show weak strikes because the new planchets sometimes required stronger pressure from the presses. This makes well-struck 1968 circulation coins more desirable. Errors from this year, including off-center coins, die, caps die, cracks, weak strikes, and clipped planchets, also capture collectors' attention.